Hello and welcome to Rolling in Mills. The film today is It's Such a Beautiful Day, 2012 by Don Hertzfeldt. Now we just finished watching this a couple of hours ago, and this is my second time watching this, but Sean's first.
Sort of first, because I'd seen the first short, which is It's Going to Be Okay, isn't it?
Yeah, everything's going to be okay. Yeah. For reference, this is a very strange film to kind of come at and immediately tackle. If you've never heard of this, this is a short 70-minute animated feature, but it kind of isn't really a feature. It's actually a cobbling together of three separate animated films. Sean had seen the first one, I'd seen all three before.
And they'd come out like 2 years each after each other, I think?
Initially, the first one, Everything's Going to Be Okay, was released in 2006, I believe.
I think, yeah.
Next one was like 2008, and finally the whole thing was released in 2012. It's this intensely different film. Its narrative is kind of hard to pin down because it's very, very lyrical and poetic.
That night, Bill dreamt he was at the seaside, desperately throwing dead bodies off of a little boat.
I suppose the fundamental outline is it follows a man named Bill who is kind of diagnosed with some kind of brain tumor.
His doctor said he had some discouraging news. The latest tests ruled out the possibility of further surgeries, and his current treatment didn't seem to be making any progress. He wanted to start Bill on something new. He couldn't think of any reason why Bill should be seeing things, though, and asked him a series of questions.
And essentially the film is this perspective from Bill and his experience with this condition. And I mean, we get to see some incredible experimentation, especially in multimedia.
But even I think that's even kind of, as a summary, it doesn't really do it justice, because the film is so much more, it's like really about Bill's life. I mean, not even just Bill's life, it's about, you know, the human experience.
Yeah, I don't know how to actually sell this film to someone, because as soon as you look at stills from it, it looks like a joke. The entire thing is just, it's stick figures. It's like, it looks horribly amateurish, and it kind of is in a way, which is part of the charm, but I mean, I don't know how to even kind of describe how monumental of an experience this is.
I think there's even an interview with him where he says something like, you can draw with like crayons, a blue and a red like box, and you can have the audience in tears, just if you do a good enough job.
He'd read once how each cell in the body replaces itself and dies as the years pass. How everyone is slowly reconstructed out of continuously changing pieces. It depressed him how foreign the picture seemed to him now, how his ridiculous ingrown cells had long ago stolen this happy dead kid's identity, and with his own life made a complete mess of it.
I suppose the film is like overtly philosophical in a lot of ways, but it doesn't really say anything particularly new in that department. It's more in the way that it actually articulates it aesthetically.
It's like a sensation sort of thing of pulling you into this like, oh fuck, sort of.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to swear on this?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, this is a no swearing.
No swear zone. You're allowed to watch horrible, philosophically devastating movies. No swears.
I wouldn't say it's philosophical, more like contemplative and reflective.
It's definitely a character piece. I mean, the entire thing is about Bill. It's also about much more than Bill, the surrounding characters of his life. I'd say it's reflective and contemplative of his life experience, especially aesthetically. I mean, the entire film is kind of gravitated around how Bill perceives the world, especially with this condition that he has.
Which becomes so interesting as the movie goes further and further along.
And this condition kind of develops and subsides. And I mean, there is some incredibly abstract imagery here.
Would I be right in saying that he's directly inspired by Stan Brakhage?
Yeah. That's, as soon as I started watching this, I'm like, wow, this is like a actual narrative Stan Brakhage film. And that's like all of my notes, especially starting to write this, is just Stan Brakhage. it's more than just Stan Brakhage and the visuals. I mean, there are times here where if you placed this film next to some of Stan Brakhage's, any of his films, they would be almost indiscernible from one another. They're so remarkably similar.
He takes that Stan Brakhage experimentation and he implements it alongside it, like every medium he can get his hands on.
Oh, I mean, this is just, because you see this like stick figure creation that this guy has, and all the animation is like remarkably simple. There's not a lot of movement. It's not complex in any way. But then you realize that literally one guy, Don Hertzfeldt, directed, wrote, produced, animated, voice acted, did the music for it as well.
Yeah, some of the music he made.
I mean, and then you just see the level of intricacy in some of the shots he's getting. I mean, this combines what, like stop frame animation, traditional hand-drawn animation, like in-camera effects with like 16mm and 35mm film. I mean, like just the level of multimedia that this guy encapsulates in one film that he also made entirely himself. I mean, it's like, it's remarkable watching this.
Even if he had like people helping him with it, like a few people, it'd be amazing, but this is just almost him.
Especially how like total of an experience it is, emotionally, philosophically, character-wise. It's so compact and realized. It's kind of like, it's its own little like masterpiece in a way that, you know, it's not as if it's just had some like, you know, novel experimentation. It's novel experimentation with the aesthetic of that perfectly complementing the narrative.
It really hits like the mark. Most of the time, like I guess there are a few moments that took me out of it a bit.
Yeah,
but I guess that's all part of the. There were points where it's like, is he using this to do something? Like some of the, I don't know, like some of the humor works.
Some of the humor does get a bit grating. I mean, the entire thing is like completely tragic, but it plays on what would you call it, like tragic comedy?
Like
very black humor.
Bill watched part of a documentary program about a 5,000-year-old Iceman that was found in Italy. Scientists explored its colon and everything on live television.
Very sympathetic black, not so much...
Oh, definitely.
Not so much like a kind of nasty black humor, but a very human one.
Very depressing black humor, but at the same time, it does go into that kind of zone of repeated, absurd black humor that is a little jarring eventually.
Because he really, well, that's sort of what he was originally doing with his short films. Just a lot of absurd sort of visual comedy and sound effects and stuff.
You're watching the Family Learning Channel. And now, angry ticks fire out of my nipples.
Yeah, and completely, like, almost anti-comedy in parts. But it does get a little bit grating when the butt of every joke is just absurd thing.
Yeah.
When Grandma would visit and he'd show her his drawings, she'd often imagine how easily she could toss little Bill into the fireplace.
But I mean, that's a pretty minor complaint. For the most part, it's like
that would kill something if it were like
any worse.
If that was the only thing that it was. But this is just like, even if you wanted to hate it, you couldn't really like just fully.
It wouldn't be a good enough reason to hate the entire film based purely on the fact that some of the comedy is like slightly grating. I mean, it's so much more than, you know, the sum of its parts, I suppose, especially when you take into account that it's like terrible little stickmen figures.
Well, that's the thing. I was just thinking about this, and I'm thinking how long it would have taken him to do all this and all the effort that he would have put in.
Unreal.
Imagine all the like parts that didn't work that he would have had to
scrap.
Just how much work would it have been to just get it perfect? Because even when you're making something that's easy to make and stuff, that's hard, cutting stuff.
Well, my thing was, how did he storyboard this? Like, how did he storyboard shots where he was aware that there were going to be like Stan Brakhage style visuals in the background, and then was consciously thinking ahead like, oh, I'm going to need to shoot water in a certain abstract experimental way to gain this very specific effect I want for this very specific scene. Like every single shot almost has just like some effect where I'm thinking, God, how did you like how did you achieve that? Like, not only like literally how did you shoot that, because apparently he created a lot of kind of new experimental techniques for this film, but like,
how did you envision
that, and then completely by yourself go out and do that?
Yeah, I wonder what the like extent of like just playing around with it, and how much was like he knew exactly where it was going where. Like, I wish it'd be interesting to see like how he makes
like the actual production of it, because you know, when you think of like, I mean, this is a very experimental film in a lot of ways, particularly visually, but when I think experimental film, it's literally like someone experimenting, right? But the difference here is it's someone experimenting with a perfectly like well-rounded and constructed narrative. Like this was planned. I mean, the whole thing is like a written plot, right? It's loose and it jumps back and forth and through time and space, but it's still a cohesive thing.
That's an interesting point, because it's not just like showcasing some things that he's done, he's using them for a desired effect, but like it's interesting like putting something out there with all this new stuff.
But it's like concomitant with like an actual narrative, because like you see a Stan Brakhage film and it might be noteworthy for a new technique he's used, but besides like whatever philosophical underlyings, you know, come with that film or theoretical underlyings, there's no narrative there. It doesn't serve a greater purpose in regards to like narrative filmmaking. Philosophically or theoretically, yes.
I'm not so sure. Although I would say at least that it's much less accessible, much less sort of kind to the first viewing. I don't know.
I'm talking more like it perfectly encapsulates like visual experimentation, but this is using that for the purpose of narrative filmmaking. Not that that's necessarily better, but it's very impressive that he was not only able to achieve something incredible visually, but use it in a film to perfectly depict what he's talking about. Like, I couldn't think of a better way to present a film about the fragmented mind of a dude who has a brain tumor or some kind of like almost like schizophrenia almost.
And it's also seamless.
Oh yeah.
And not just like the schizophrenia. I mean, that's even just sort of a
like an underlying like little piece, one of the
but
characters.
I mean, it's also a sort of I kind of saw it as a kind of the humdrum, or like the madness of existence, like the ecstasies and the tragedies of living and the kind of clusterfuck.
Yeah, well that's another thing. It shouldn't be like denigrated by just saying, oh, this is a really great visual depiction of X mental disorder.
It's not a topical piece. It's a very
well, it's a great depiction of mundanity in a lot of ways. I mean, I think the opening scene,
Bill dropped his keys on the counter and stood there staring at them, suddenly thinking about all the times he'd thrown his keys there before, and how many days of his life were wasted repeating the same tasks and rituals in his apartment over and over again. But then he wondered if, realistically, this was his life. And the unusual part was his time spent doing other things.
This is where it gets like a little bit on the nose, especially I noticed this after the second viewing, where it feels like Don Hertzfeldt is like just talking to camera about his ideals, and it gets a little bit like it's talking about like determinism at one point, where it's like, I talked to a guy and he read a book and it said that nothing we do is, and I'm like,
I thought that was at least he kept it down to a minimum, and it fit in, like, it wasn't too, it was mostly
it's
seamless.
Not like, this is my ideology, please listen to
me.
Well,
I don't even know if he was using it for like, to showcase an ideology. I thought it was more like putting ideas in your head that gave a new sort of reflection on this like life experience that you're partaking in.
At lunch he told Bill about a physics book he was reading about time, how the passing of time is just an illusion, because all of eternity is actually taking place at once. The past never vanishes away, and the future has already happened. All of history is fixed and laid out, like an infinite landscape of simultaneous events that we simply happen to travel through in one direction.
Well, I think a lot of people would pass this off as being really pretentious for almost exactly that reason, and I think that's like a very poor assessment of the film. And secondarily, you're gonna get people who are like, whoa man, this is like so deep, it taught me all these new things about life, man. It's like, I don't think it's particularly like novel in its ideas. I mean,
No.
it doesn't really act like that anyway. It's more like being
Well, yeah,
filtered
I
through.
wasn't even thinking about those kind of responses when I was watching it. Like, I don't really give a fuck.
I'm just aware of like how people have responded to this. I mean, this has like overwhelming critical acclaim, but I'm just aware a lot of people who watch it are like, man, like, man, dude,
I don't know. For
doobie,
some
man.
reason, the only way I can imagine is people thinking that was delightful and nice, but I don't know.
Delightful.
So, yeah, I don't know. Like,
Oh yes.
I don't know. I can't see anyone taking it too seriously.
Really?
I mean, like, obviously it's an overwhelming experience, but I can't.
I actually completely disagree. I think it's like the perfect catalyst for strong experience, especially when you have that like philosophical underpinning that you give people.
But what I mean is that it's so it has a kind of universal almost appeal.
Oh
not
yeah,
appeal,
no,
but
definitely.
yeah.
Universal understanding because it's universal issues.
Bill daydreamed about all the brains and jars he used to see at school, how he used to wonder whether there were still somehow pieces of individuals inside, scattered fragments of partial dreams or lost memories locked deep within that dead tissue, or whether this entire archive is immediately erased the moment that the body fails.
Yeah, I wonder what would be the principal like criticisms of the movie, do you think, from someone with a much harsher opinion? Like, what do you think would be sort of
It would be basically everything that makes the film unique, I would say. I think people would criticize it broadly for being pretentious. Then they would say that it lacks narrative, cohesive narrative. They'd say it has a lot of filler, which,
That's
I
a good
mean,
point. Yeah.
technically it does, but it's like all towards contributing to like the idea and the form of the film, right?
I guess if I went through this, I might be able to see where the because there was 3 different shorts put together. I reckon I could probably see where because those things exist on their own as like
Yeah, they're
separate
their own
pieces.
chapters.
So I could probably see them as like parts where the narrative goes a bit too like it's a bit too finishing here, starting the next one.
I actually have not the opposite, but I didn't feel that at all, especially rewatching it. It didn't feel as if like after the first one we could never have seen any more of it, or after the second one. Like, I mean, you could have cut it off, but it would have been not really conclusive.
That's not what I was trying to get at so much as because I agree with you. It wouldn't be so much of a clean cut thing, but I mean that kind of the pacing and the placement of certain emotions and scenes felt a little like.
Oh, this is kind of happening now. Like you have that like almost premature death scene that happens where he's talking about the smell of moonlight and dust or whatever.
And as the sun continues to set, he finally comes to realize the dumb irony in how he'd been waiting for this moment his entire life. This stupid, awkward moment of death that had invaded and distracted so many days with stress and wasted time. If only he could travel back and impart some wisdom to his younger self. If only he could at least tell the young people in this room. He lifts an arm to speak, but inexplicably says, "It smells like dust and moonlight."
No, the way I interpreted that one was, you know how they have that sequence where they talk about all of time happening? Like we're seeing his life in all different places, but it's not just a
simultaneously
stream.
as well.
Yeah.
Well, because I thought it was basically that he died at the water, essentially, right before that whole sequence where he goes off, because it's like, oh, you're not going to die now, because it almost makes it out like it's the end of the film and it's just going to be cut to black. And then you have that whole, he walks the earth for hundreds of years sequence. So I'm assuming he did die at that point, and then his brain kind of extrapolates and escapes.
Was that even real? I just thought that was like I mean, it doesn't really matter, but...
It doesn't matter, but it's like the, is it the final, like, running away from death?
He will spend hundreds of years traveling the world, learning all there is to know. He will learn every language. He will read every book. He will know every land. He will spend thousands of years creating stunning works of art.
Well, we were talking about, like, how people would deem this pretentious, and I do know a lot of people deem this as pretentious. A small minority, but that's their central argument. And
argument, it's just like, that's as legitimate a perspective as any other.
No, I'm not like, you are wrong. You're not allowed to think this film.
I'd go and read a review of this movie trashing it, and I wouldn't give a fuck. Like, I don't really care. Like, wow. I know some people like, what the fuck? How could you trash it such a beautiful day? Yeah, because it kind of, I don't know.
Oh no, it doesn't matter, but I'm just saying, like, in regards to like critical perspective, that is one of the central complaints. And I think one of the reasons why is, in a lot of pretentious films like this, and especially indie films, they really like to show the transcendence of the normal thing. Whoa, these blades of grass are like so beautiful, man.
It always fails because it becomes funny. Because it never hits the right spot that makes you feel like that's what's going on. Like the fucking plastic bag scene in American, because you were going to bring that up, I think. That's just like, you watch it and you go, what the fuck is this? This is stupid.
Like I get what you're saying, but at the same time, you're just showing me footage of a plastic bag. Like, you could fuck right off. With this, it's like, he's done that. It's definitely like transcendence of normality. In that regard, like there's a whole scene at the end.
Showing almost how the normal, like not even transcendent, because that implies rising above normal. This is more like showing how every single thing, like there's that whole sequence where he's on the verge of death, and he's just running through, and you know, looking at everything with a new life, like the eyes of a child.
On the side of the road, he sees a woman's tennis shoe filled with leaves, and it fills him with inexplicable sadness. He walks down his side street and sees striking colors in the faces of the people around him. Details in these beautiful brick walls and weeds that he must have passed every day but never noticed. The air smells different. He's never brighter somehow, and the currents under the bridge look strange and vivid, and the sun is warming his face, and the world is clumsy and beautiful and new. And it's as though he's been sleepwalking for God knows how long. And something has violently shaken him awake.
And that's not even like a particularly amazing like theme, because you know it's kind of normal, but it's very well done.
Yeah, well, it's very well done visually. It isn't just a purely conceptual like, whoa man, think about grass is like so cool.
Because
it's like,
you're right. It's very powerful contrast. It's almost like, you know, you've seen La Jetée, and the parts where they actually have visual like movement instead of just still images is very powerful. Like that's an interesting display of what you can achieve by being like holding back.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's noticeable because like the rest of the film is basically in black and white, and then this part is like full, beautiful, vibrant color, and it kind of it has this. It's a piece by Wagner in the background, and it's so forceful and brilliant, and all of the aesthetic choices of the film come together to display, wow, like look at the intricacy of normal human life.
His bath mats are gorgeous.
And it's also, it works well in the narrative, because at that point it's very emotionally engaging, because he's, you know,
he's kind of broken through.
And he's on the verge of death and everything's coming together, sort of thing.
Yeah, and he kind of has the realization towards the end of his life that he was like, I love the line he says he wants to like yell and scream that like everything is amazing to all of these people.
He wants to stop people in the street and say, "Isn't this amazing? Isn't everything amazing?"
And that's how you do that. You don't just shoot a plastic bag and be like, "Whoa, think about it. It's really cool, guys."
Well, that is sort of coming from a different place, because it's a teenage stoner.
Oh yeah, obviously.
Videotaping in some like shitty suburbia.
Yeah, but it's coming from like the perspective of someone who also thinks that's really cool though.
Actually, at the end, when they have this is fucking American Beauty. You know at the end of American Beauty where he's dying, and then he's going like, spoiler by the way, where he's dying and he's like,
and then I remember to relax and stop trying to hold on to it. And then it flows through me like rain. And I can't feel anything but gratitude for every single moment of my stupid little life.
oh, everything's beautiful, and you see everything playing through. I thought that actually worked alright. I know some people...
I think it's really corny. I kind of like the idea of it, but like...
But I fucking fall for that every time.
Really?
Yeah, I don't... Like, I'm a piece of shit
I think the first time when I watched it when I was like 13 or 14, I was like, oh my god. And then every time I've subsequently watched it, I find it really immature.
The movie's like a piece of shit, but like the
Not
ending...
as a whole, I think it's okay.
Okay, whatever.
Actually, those parts are my least favorite. I kind of like Kevin Spacey's character in that movie.
They were just effective, like when I watched them. I can't remember, it's been a while though.
Yeah, it's not a particularly like highbrow movie. It just has some like kind of like novel experimentation for like an American film.
Oh, okay.
Oh, you've got like the rose petal scene. I mean, nothing like particularly like really notable at all.
Are we
in the grand
reviewing American
scheme.
Beauty now?
Yeah, American Beauty, 0 out of 5. It's Such a Beautiful Day, 10 out of 10. Best film.
Mostly they talked about death. They agreed that being buried seemed too claustrophobic, and Bill didn't want to be cremated after he'd read that the intense heat boils fluids in the skull until your head explodes. He decided that he'd want his body shot off into space in a rocket ship. He figured it'd be too expensive to launch the weight of his entire body, but maybe just sending his head into space would be good enough.
What do you think of this in closing?
I don't actually have any strong like feelings on it. Like, that's
okay,
kind of
that's all, everyone. Thanks for watching this.
I don't know. It's just it's fine, I guess. Like, it's a good movie, and I enjoyed the experience, but I can't really say that I'd go around singing its praises.
Really?
No.
Because I love this like a lot.
I don't know. It's like it's almost too much. I don't know. It works. It's a good like thing on its own, but like once it's finished, I'm like, yeah. Like, I don't know. I find everything it's done, apart from technically, because the technical side is amazing, but everything it's doing, I feel like, what's that word? It's like, you ever seen an art piece that's tried to be too visually amazing? I always think
it's like cluttered or something.
I think that it's a kind of burst of energy and realization and it's epiphany, but
especially for how short it is.
I wouldn't say that it's a particularly like...
Well, the grandiose spectacle?
Oh no, it definitely is. That's what the film is, but what I'm saying is it doesn't really touch me on a deep level.
I think I like this film a lot more. I wouldn't ever say that it's like profoundly affected me. I think it's a very profound film in the way it comes across and in the way it's designed, in the sense that it's like very overwhelming. But I don't know, I would almost rank this in one of my favorite films of the decade so far. I haven't seen like a few of the big ones, like a lot of the critically acclaimed
I haven't seen enough of recent stuff, actually.
You've seen Cars 2. Cars 2, Such a Beautiful Day.
No, you see, we've got to see it in cinemas. Because you keep shitting on it, but I'm telling you.
Got to go for the Cars trilogy coming out. You can't even
see all the details and all the...
You can't see the fine metalwork in the fake cars.
Cars 2 fucking better than this piece of shit.
He was a quiet, unassuming man who was eating an onion one day when he was cut in half by a train.
Yeah, you should sign with Disney. Make Cars 3 with them.
That's a really good idea. Don Hertzfeldt directs Cars 3. It's a piece about how Lightning McQueen, his entire life is falling apart and he dissipates into nothingness.
What's gonna happen is he's gonna be on the road and he's gonna, like, his fucking car battery's gonna run out, it's gonna and you'll see it all inside the car. And you'll learn what's inside the cars, because there's no people in them. Maybe there are people and they're all hooked in.
Yeah, and then we, blurt out of existence. Quadrillion years in the future, Lightning McQueen runs the universe.
And where all the cars came from.
Yeah, and we're actually living inside his engine, and the sun is a combustion machine.
That I could turn back time, 'cause now the guilt is all mine. Can't live without the trust from those you love. I know we can't forget the past.
Such a Beautiful Day, out in cinemas.
Never. Fuck American Beauty. Fuck It's Such a Beautiful Day. Cars 3 in cinemas now.
Do it. It's good.